I want to run a scenario by you.
Yeah.
It's a specific visualization from the source material we're looking at today, and honestly, it's a bit of a horror story disguised as, a dream life.
Oh, I love a good horror story.
Yeah.
Set the scene.
Okay, so you wake up on a Tuesday, and you are, statistically crushing it. You're in the top income bracket, earning $200,000 a year.
Right.
That's roughly $4,000 hitting your bank account every single week. You walk out to the driveway, you get into your new luxury SUV, you're driving from the spacious home in the right zip code.
The whole package.
Exactly. From the outside, you are the definition of success.
Sounds like the finish line for most people. That's the American dream on a platter.
It is, but here comes the twist. That evening, on the drive home, the SUV starts making this noise. You take it to the shop, and the mechanic says it's a standard repair, nothing catastrophic, but it's going to be $2,000.
Okay. Annoying, but manageable, you'd think.
You would think. So you pull out your credit card, you hand it over with total confidence, and it gets declined. So you check your banking app in a panic, and you realize you have less than $1,000 in accessible cash. You earn nearly $4,000 a week, but you can't pay for a simple car repair without going into debt.
That is the terrifying reality check. And it just brings up the central question, right? How is it even possible to be rich on paper, but completely, utterly broke in practice?
That is the exact mystery we are solving today. We're doing a deep dive into a breakdown called The Wealth Illusion, Escaping the High Earner Debt Trap by a financial analyst named Bobby. And he focuses specifically on this demographic, high-income professionals who are, secretly drowning.
And it's a massive demographic. I think we tend to assume that financial fragility is only an issue for, low-income earners. But Bobby's analysis points to this unique kind of brittleness at the very top.
So what's the cause?
It comes down to a really fundamental misunderstanding of what money actually is. Most of us are taught from day one that income equals wealth.
Well, yeah, that's the scorecard, isn't it? If I tell someone I make $200, they assume I'm wealthy.
They assume you have high cash flow. And those are two very, very different things. The core thesis here is that income is just velocity. It's the speed at which money moves through your life. Wealth is retention. It's what actually stays.
Velocity versus retention. I like that.
Think of it like a river versus a reservoir. You can have a massive, raging river of cash flowing through your hands, $20,000 a month, let's say.
Yeah.
But if there's no dam, no reservoir to catch any of it, the valley is bone dry the second the rain stops.
So the person in our opening scenario has this high-velocity river, but they're standing on completely dry ground.
Exactly. Bobby calls this person a middleman.
A middleman for who?
For everyone else. Think about the path of that dollar. It leaves the employer, it hits your bank account for maybe 24 hours.
If that.
And then it immediately flows out. To the bank for the mortgage, to the dealership for the car lease, to the credit card company for the lifestyle, and of course, to the IRS. The earner isn't the destination for the money, they're just a conduit.
That makes you feel like a pass-through entity. You're just processing transactions for other businesses.
And that leads to this sensation the source describes as the financial treadmill. You are running at a dead sprint, you're exhausted, cortisol is high, but your net worth, which is the only real measure of your financial health, it isn't moving.
Okay, but wait, I have to push back a little here. Surely having a high income makes it easier to get off that treadmill. If you're making $50, you're struggling to eat. If you're making $200K, shouldn't you have a massive advantage?
You should, absolutely. Mathematically, you have a massive shovel. But psychologically, you have a massive problem, and it's called the Golden Handcuffs.
I've heard that term, but usually it's about, stock options keeping you at a job you hate.
Here it refers more to the lifestyle trap. When that first really big paycheck hits, say, a $10,000 direct deposit, it feels intoxicating. It feels permanent. The human brain is just terrible at forecasting risk, so we assume this is my new normal. I will always make this kind of money.
And so we start signing contracts based on that best-case scenario.
We build a structural floor underneath us that requires that $10,000 just to keep us standing. We sign the big lease, we finance the cars, we upgrade the kids' schools, and suddenly your monthly burn rate perfectly matches your income.
And that's the handcuffs.
That's the handcuffs. Because now you can't quit. Even if the job becomes toxic, even if your boss is a total nightmare, you have zero leverage. You cannot walk away because your lifestyle owns you.
Yeah.
And the source puts it so brutally, that isn't financial freedom. That is high pay dependency.
It's so weird to think of a high salary as a dependency, but
Yeah.
yeah, if you need every single cent just to keep the lights on, you're basically a well-dressed, indentured servant.
It's incredibly fragile. But before we get to the psychology of why we spend it all, we really need to look at the math of where it actually goes, because I think there's this misconception that these people are just, blowing it all on caviar and private jet.
Right. Or avocado toast. That's always the scapegoat.
It's not the toast. The source breaks down what he calls the silent drains.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first one is just cold, hard math. Is your silent partner.
Yeah. Taxes.
Taxes. The breakdown in the source is, it's pretty sobering. If you're earning $200,000 in a high-tax state, think New York or California, you are not seeing $200,000. Not even close. After federal, state, FICA, local taxes, you're losing 35 to 45% right off the top.
So in your head, you're a $200 K person, but your bank account is actually seeing what? Closer to $120K.
You're taking home closer to $120,000.
Yeah.
That breaks down to about $10,000 a month. Now, don't get me wrong, $10,000 a month is a lot of money. Most people would kill for that.
Absolutely. But this is where that lifestyle inflation kicks in. And I want to get specific here because the source doesn't really blame this on ordering takeout. It blames it on these huge structural costs.
This is the key insight. It's the peer group tax.
Yeah.
When you get that high-paying job, you move to the neighborhood where the other high earners live. And that means a $4,000, maybe $5,000 mortgage.
Okay, so half the paycheck is gone
Wow.
instantly, just on the roof over your head.
Then you look at the driveway. In these neighborhoods, you just don't see 10-year-old Hondas. You see Audis, Teslas, Range Rovers. There's an implicit pressure to signal that you belong. So you lease 2 nice cars.
And that's another, what, $1,500 gone?
Easily. So now we're down to $3,500 left for the whole month.
And we haven't even talked about student loans or childcare.
Exactly. Then there's the professional tax. Dry cleaning, wardrobe, networking dinners. Then the kids. If you're in a certain bracket, there's pressure for private school or those elite travel sports leagues.
And suddenly that $10,000 is zero.
Or negative. The source points out that many high earners actually celebrate breaking even. They think, hey, I paid the mortgage, the cars, and the credit card minimums. I'm doing great.
But that's just treading water.
It's survival. It is not wealth. Wealth requires a surplus, that gap between what you earn and what you spend. If your revenue equals your expenses, your personal business has a profit margin of 0. You're basically working for free.
That brings us to a really critical concept in this deep dive: assets versus liabilities. And I feel like everyone sort of nods along to this. Yeah, buy assets, but the source argues most people just don't truly understand the opportunity cost of their liabilities.
This was probably the strongest part of Bobby's analysis for me. He uses the example of that luxury car. Let's say you lease a BMW for $800 a month. You think, I can afford the monthly payment. It fits in my cash flow.
Yeah, it's just a line item. $800 out of $10,000 doesn't seem that crazy.
But that is linear thinking. You have to think exponentially. The source actually calculates the future value of that payment. If you invested that same $800 a month into the market at a standard 7% return over the course of a decade, that isn't $96,000.
Compounding does its thing.
It does its magic. It grows to nearly $140,000. And if you're doing that for 2 cars, you are literally driving $250,000 in future wealth down the highway.
Wow. When you put it that way,
Yeah.
the new car smell gets a lot less appealing. You aren't just spending $800, you're actively destroying $140,000 of your own retirement.
Precisely. That is the opportunity cost of status. We are trading our future freedom for a shiny object today. And the worst part, it's a depreciating asset. It loses value every single day you own it.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second, because I can hear someone listening right now saying, look, I work 60 hours a week. I deal with high stress. I deserve to drive a nice car. I deserve a nice vacation.
And that is the psychological trap, right? The I deserve this trap. The source validates the hard work. You do work hard, but it reframes what the reward should be.
How so?
Well, the analyst argues that the dopamine hit of buying the car lasts for maybe 3 weeks. It's called hedonic adaptation. Get the BMW, it feels amazing, and then a month later, it's just your car. It's just the seat you sit in to get to work.
But the payment lasts for years.
The payment remains. The stress remains. He argues that the true reward for hard work isn't a liability. It's security. It's liquidity.
Liquidity. Okay, let's double click on that word, because the source makes a huge distinction between paper net worth and liquid wealth.
This is so important. You can have a net worth of $2 million on paper because your house in San Francisco has appreciated. But if you lose your job tomorrow, You cannot pay for groceries with a brick from your front wall.
That's a great image. You're house rich and cash poor.
Exactly. Liquidity is what lets you sleep at night. It's having 6 months of living expenses in a high-yield savings account. It's having stocks you can actually sell if you need to. That $200 K earner we started with, the one whose card got declined,
Yeah.
they might have a high net worth on paper because of their 401k and their home equity, but they have zero liquidity. In the real world, they're insolvent.
So, okay, we've painted a pretty grim picture of the high earner poor. You're stressed, you're taxed, you're driving your retirement into the ground. But the source material does pivot to solutions. And it's not just, stop buying coffee.
No, thankfully, the advice is really tailored for this demographic.
Yeah.
And the very first step is just brutal honesty. You have to audit your liquidity.
So forget the zestimate of your house for a second. Look at what you can actually access.
Right. If your income stopped today, how many days could you survive? For a lot of these high earners, the answer is less than 30. That number has to become the priority.
Okay, so once we face the music, what's the actual strategy? The source talks a lot about automation, which sounds simple, but there's a nuance here about why high earners specifically fail at this.
This is what he calls the competence trap. It's fascinating. High earners, doctors, lawyers, engineers, they're smart. They're used to being the smartest person in the room. And so they assume that intelligence translates to investing.
Right. I can figure out the market. I can pick the winners.
Exactly. I'm a brilliant surgeon. Surely I can pick a better stock than some index fund. So they get involved in these complex private equity deals, or they day trade crypto, or they try to time the market. And the data provided in the source is it's devastating.
They underperform.
Massively. Because investing isn't really about IQ, it's about temperament. And the source's advice is to avoid that ego trap entirely.
So what's the alternative?
Boring, automated simplicity. Low-cost index funds. The source says, your income is your shovel. You don't need some magical investment return to get rich. You already have a huge shovel. You just need to stop trying to be clever and start being consistent.
So the strategy is automate the transfer the second the paycheck hits.
Before you even see it. It's called reverse budgeting. Instead of spending and then trying to save what's left over.
Which is always nothing.
You save first, aggressively, like 30 or 40%, and then you force yourself to live on the rest.
Limits create discipline. If the money just isn't in the checking account, you figure out how to survive without it.
And you'd be surprised. If you only had $6,000 a month to live on instead of $10,000, you wouldn't starve. You just wouldn't lease the second Range Rover. You'd adapt.
Speaking of adapting, we have to talk about debt. The source calls carrying credit card debt at this income level a financial emergency.
It's a hair-on-fire emergency. If you are making 6 figures and you are paying 20% interest to a bank, you are mathematically destroying your own wealth. It doesn't matter how well your portfolio performs, nothing beats a guaranteed negative 20% loss. You have to clear that deck immediately.
This all brings us to what the source calls the choice. It frames this whole journey as a fork in the road.
It really is a binary choice. You can look rich, or you can be rich. You usually can't be both, especially not in the beginning, in that accumulation phase.
And to illustrate this, the analyst compares two profiles, person A and person B.
This comparison really stuck with me. Person A is the classic executive, earning $250K, big house, luxury cars, country club membership. But they have $5,000 in the bank, $50,000 in consumer debt, and they're answering emails at 11 p.m. on a Sunday because they are terrified of losing that cash flow.
So they look successful, but they're completely trapped.
Then you have person B. Maybe they only earn $90 days. They drive a 5-year-old Toyota. They live in a modest neighborhood. But they have zero debt, a fully funded emergency fund, and a portfolio that's just compounding quietly in the background.
And crucially, they leave work at 5 p.m.
They have optionality. If their boss screams at them, they can quit. If they want to take a 6-month sabbatical, they can. Person A is a well-paid servant. Person B is a free human being. And the question the source asks is, which life do you actually want?
It hits hard because society just screams at us to be person A. Every commercial, every Instagram post, it tells you that person A is the winner.
But person A is tired. Person A is anxious. The source is really trying to redefine success away from status and towards independence.
So let's bring this all home for the listener. We've covered the trap, the math of the silent drains, the psychology of the golden handcuffs. If someone is listening to this right now and realizing, oh my God, I am the guy with the declined credit card, what do they do right now?
The source ends with a challenge, but I want to sharpen it a little. Don't just cut expenses. That's like dieting. It almost never works long term. Instead, I want you to calculate your freedom date.
What does that mean exactly?
Sit down and look at your burn rate. How much do you actually spend in a year? Now look at your liquid assets, your real, accessible money. Divide your assets by your spending. That result, that is your runway. If you have $50,000 saved and you spend $100,000 a year, you have 6 months of freedom.
That is a very sobering number.
It usually is. But once you see that number, whether it's 3 months or 3 years, you can start to gamify it. Your goal isn't this vague get-rich idea. Your goal is buy another year of freedom.
I love that framing. I'm not saving $5,000. I'm buying a month of my life back.
Exactly. When you frame it that way, driving the Toyota doesn't feel like a sacrifice anymore. It feels like a purchase. You're trading a leather seat for 6 months of not having to answer to anyone.
Which brings us all the way back to that concept of optionality. The ultimate form of wealth isn't the stuff, it's the ability to just say no.
The ability to walk away.
Yeah.
The ability to pivot. The quiet confidence of knowing that you are going to be okay, regardless of what the economy does or what your boss says.
Yeah.
That changes how you walk through the world.
And frankly, that is a whole lot cooler than any leased luxury car.
100%.
We're going to leave it there. A massive reality check from the wealth illusion. If you're high income but low liquidity, it's time to stop digging that hole and start building the ladder out. Thanks for diving in with us, and we'll catch you next time.